Thank you so much, John. That was just a great overview, and we're fortunate to have John back on stage or amongst you for our wrap-up session. So, what a great overview. And now we're going to move on to a specific case study of a heavy or an energy-intensive company that has used wind to reduce electricity price volatility. So it's my pleasure to introduce Heyns. He's General Manager for Geelong Refinery at Viva Energy and has more than 30 years experience in the oil and gas industry.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Strikes me that it's after lunch and you're at the end of, in some cases, almost 3 days of conferencing, so I hope I can keep it exciting this afternoon. As the introduction said, I am responsible for the Geelong Refinery, which is the refinery that Viva Energy own, based in Geelong in Victoria. And I'm here to tell you how we've used a wind PPA to reduce both our energy cost and the volatility associated with our energy pricing. Before I do that, I just want to do a small plug for Viva Energy and introduce Viva Energy a little bit to all of you. Viva Energy is a downstream fuels business that basically exists to help Australians like you and I reach their destinations. We do this by nationally supplying about 25% of Australia's fuel needs. And we do it through a network of 28 terminals around the country, more than 1,200 retail sites, which you will recognize under the Shell brand or the Coles Express brand, or in some cases the Liberty brand, or also Westside Petroleum brand. We're also present at about 50 airports around the country, and we do business through numerous B2B channels, including having about 48% of the marine fuel oil market and about 37% of the jet fuel market. We manufacture at the Geelong Refinery, but we also import product into the country because in some locations it's more economic to do imports than to manufacture. And some of our biggest and best customers are actually mining customers, many of whom are represented in the room today. So it's really my pleasure to be talking at the Energy and Mines Summit. I want to just say that the Geelong Refinery, apart from producing all the normal fuels that you would expect out of an oil refinery, is the second largest and the most highly configured refinery in Australia. What does that mean? The highly configured means that we are able to produce more high-value product, including producing a number of specialities that we are unique for now in Australia. We're the only producer of aviation gasoline for piston-powered small aircraft. We're the only producer of bitumen in the country, and we're also the only producer of hydrocarbon solvents. And in all three those cases, we're somewhat unique. Now, the story of electricity prices, I think, is very familiar, especially to all of you after almost 3 days of being here. It's a very challenging story, and it has been particularly challenging if you're an oil refinery. And the way you have to think about an oil refinery is this is an integrated manufacturing process that is highly automated and literally runs from crude in on one side to products out on the other side. It has very few divisions in that manufacturing process, and apart from being highly integrated, we run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we use a lot of energy, which is somewhat ironic given that we're also a producer of energy in the form of our products, but we use a lot of energy, both power and natural gas in our process. In fact, we use about 300 gigawatt hours of imported power each year, and in our case, as demonstrated in the graph, power prices have almost tripled since 2012. And not only have they almost tripled, but they've become far more volatile, as shown on the right-hand side graph. Now, there are lots of causes. No doubt you've discussed that over the last few days. You know, the biggest one, of course, is the retirement of coal-fired generation. More expensive gas-fired marginal generation, some generator bidding behavior, lack of investment, and of course the modernization of the network to accommodate renewable generation and decentralized power systems. And on top of that, we have a, let's call it an unstable policy and regulatory framework that has made things even more challenging. So in the case of the Geelong Refinery, where we find it hard to vary our demand and where our demand is pretty constant, we've been actively working now for a few years to kind of help ourselves. And we started off by just simply moving away from standard retail power supply. We moved into active energy price risk management through a combination of forward power purchases and spot power purchases. So in other words, employing a bit of a portfolio approach to manage our power risk. And despite all the things that we've already done to help ourselves, prices have kept going up, and so we have continued to look at other options. Now, we all know that the electricity generation mix and costs have probably changed forever. As I've already said, coal-fired baseload generation has been retired and is continuing to retire, and it's being replaced with renewables, where the levelized cost of renewables is now cheaper than in the case of coal. Now, if you're an oil refinery running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and you need a lot of power, you really don't care where those electrons come from. What you need is reliability and competitive prices. And so in looking at our solution to our challenges, we've looked at a whole range of options. We've looked at behind the meter solar installation on our own land. We've looked at waste to energy options. We've looked at direct offtake from coal-fired generators. And of course, we've looked at contracts with renewable power generators. You know, in terms of the latter, the options are virtually endless. And the Business Renewable Centre has been quoted as saying there are more than 250 different types of power purchasing agreements available in the market at the moment. And lots of different players, both public and private, middlemen and principals. So there are lots of options, and that's part of what makes it kind of hard to figure out exactly what you want to do. So in assessing all of our options, one of the things that became really clear to us is we needed to be very, very clear about what was important to us and what our criteria for success looked like. So I'm pleased to say that Geelong Refinery signed a power purchasing agreement with Axiona's Mount Jellybrand wind farm, and the criteria that we used for our decision was that we wanted a somewhat shorter term commitment, allied to the fact that we have let's call them maintenance cycles. Every 4 to 6 years we shut the refinery down to open it up, inspect it, maintain it, put it all back together again. And so those are kind of significant events in the history of Refinery. We also wanted to be contracting with someone that was already producing and already commissioned, so that we could avoid some of the well-known challenges of ramp-up and delays that are prevalent in the market at the moment. And because as an oil refinery we are very much a energy-intensive trade exposed industry, the red certificates were slightly less important to us, and the thing that really mattered was that we were able to secure a competitive price. And so trying to figure out what a competitive price looks like was actually quite challenging. But if you do your homework, you can eventually figure out what it should look like. And certainly, government tenders have helped to kind of give one a sense of where the market is at. So as I say, we did a deal with Acciona. They're in the audience today. We were very pleased to do a deal with Acciona, who are a very well-established, solid and reliable counterparty. And the deal was slightly unique in the sense that it was ultimately a financial deal only, in the form of a contract for difference. The net result of which is that we secured an agreed price for our share of the Mount Gellibrand wind farm production, and in the case of our deal, that was for 100 gigawatt hours per annum. And as you can see from the graph on the left-hand side, the dark blue, or at least the line that keeps going up, is what our energy prices would have looked like, and the somewhat lighter blue triangle reflects the fact that energy prices have actually come down as a function of the deal we did with Acciona. Just in the first quarter of this year, we literally saved millions of dollars. So it has worked very well for us. It continues, though, to be only one part of our power purchasing mix, and we continue to follow a portfolio approach, including the deal we did with Acciona. Now, for the mining customers in the room, what can you take out of this, and what advice would I have for big users of baseload power? As I said, I think the thing that's really important is to be 100% clear about what's important for you and what are your criteria for a power purchasing agreement. And in the case of mines, I imagine that looking at behind-the-meter options would potentially have some real attraction, because of course you'd avoid the network charges, and as I said, that was certainly one of the options that we looked at. The other thing that I would say is not to settle. There is a very wide range of instruments and possibilities in the market, and so be sure to stick with it until you find the deal that works for you. As always, everything has risks and challenges, and the same accounts for our deal. In the first instance, probably the biggest risk is, you're going to commit to a price and you don't know what future prices are going to do. So getting a view on that and getting some clarity in your own mind is very important. And in our case, at the point at which we were doing this deal, the forecast was that power prices would stabilize and drop off, and I'll get back to that in a minute. The other risk, and it's somewhat associated with the price risk, but also with the inherent uncertainty of business risk, is the term for which you contract. The longer the term, the more risk there obviously sits in the term of the deal. And then thirdly, for us, the uncertainty associated with national energy policy, where's that going to go? What's it going to do with prices? And in my mind, it takes a brave man to be betting on that at the moment. And then is run of plant, i.e. non-firm power, going to work out for you, or do you need firm supply? So those are the kind of risks and challenges that certainly we had to think about. And just to make the point, as a closing point, instead of coming down or stabilizing as we expected, the futures prices for electricity in the Victorian market have continued to increase ever since we did the deal. So again, to summarize, be very clear about what you need, be clear about the risks you're prepared to tolerate, don't settle, there are lots of options out there, and strap yourself in for the ride. So I want to wish you all good luck. Hopefully there's something you could have learned out of our experience, and best of luck, as I say, as you make your own energy decisions. I am happy to take a couple of questions if need be.